Hi everybody, this is Judy at Judy in the Kitchen. Today we're talking about food safety, and I have a list of tips for you for when you're preparing your food at home to make sure that your food is healthful and not going to make you sick when you eat it. This list was kind of long. I broke it up into two parts, and this is part two, so I'll have a link to the part one video below. Make sure you see them both so you can get the whole list. When you're dealing with your own cooked leftovers, especially if they've been in the refrigerator for more than 4 days, they may be perfectly fine, but they may not. So you want to take a good look at them, give them a sniff. If they don't look right, if they don't smell right, throw them away. It's really better to be safe than sorry when you're dealing with food. Rinse your fresh produce with clean, cool water right before cutting or preparing it for a meal. And that includes rinsing produce that should be peeled. Why should you rinse something that should be peeled? If you're cutting into it, if there's any bacteria or chemical residue on the outside of that watermelon, let's say, and you cut into it, whatever's on the surface, you're going to bring to the inside and infect that flesh that you're going to be eating with it through the knife activity. So if you wash that off really good first before you cut into it, you're going to avoid that process. When you're cooking foods, especially casseroles and raw animal products, when you're cooking them, you want to make sure that you cook them to the proper internal temperature. If it's not brought up to the appropriate temperature, you need to cook it or bake it longer as needed to make sure it's at least that minimal internal temperature for food safety's sake. When you are finished cooking something, if you're not able to serve it right away, remember to keep hot foods hot, cold foods cold. It's best not to just let them sit at room temperature for any length of time. For one thing, they're not going to be as hot as you want them to be, but that starts the process of the countdown for no more than 2 hours from the time it's finished cooking to the time it needs to be in the refrigerator for food safety's sake. So to keep hot foods hot, all you need to do is turn on your oven and turn it to the lowest temperature, and it's usually going to be above 140 degrees Fahrenheit, and put your food in the oven, and that will hold it at the safe temperature until you're ready to serve it. If it's cold food and you cannot serve it right away, put it in the refrigerator and it'll be held just fine that way. It's helpful to cover it up if you can, but at least get it in the fridge. If it's a frozen item, keep it in the freezer until you need it, and that will safeguard the foods, keeping cold foods cold, hot foods hot. Along those same lines, when you're serving food in a buffet style, you do want to keep hot foods hot. And you can do that with chafing dishes or slow cookers or even warming trays. Anything like that that you've got that you can use to keep those foods hot is really, really important. Cold foods can be kept cold by nesting them over bowls of ice, or even using small trays and replacing those trays often, keeping the extra trays that are prepared for serving in the refrigerator until they're needed. Rotate them out to keep cold foods cold if you can't keep them on ice. When you are preparing raw foods and you're going to cook those foods, especially animal products, and let's say you've got a raw steak on a plate, and then you cook that, whether it's on the grill or in the oven or on a griddle on the stove, something like that. When that food is done, when that steak or whatever is done, don't put it on that same plate that it was sitting on when it was raw. If you wash the plate and sanitize the plate first, after putting it on the grill or in the oven, then that's fine. As long as the plate is clean. Do not put a cooked piece of meat on a plate or a tray that has raw meat juices on it. That's a very unsafe thing to do, and it invites foodborne illness in a hurry. And that also includes cutting boards. If you have that piece of raw chicken and you've had it on a cutting board and you were slicing that raw chicken, getting it ready to cook, then that cutting board should never be used for putting the cooked food back on it. Only reserve that cutting board for raw animal products only. It should still be sanitized in between, but sanitizing may not be a foolproof, 100% effective, because cutting boards often have grooves in them or fine pores in them that bacteria can get down into, and you may not actually be able to totally get that out. So if you use a cutting board for raw animal products, reserve it for that only, never for the cooked products or for fresh foods. And last but not least, this ties in with other things that I've said time and time again. Don't leave food out at room temperature in the house for an extended period of time. It should be refrigerated within 2 hours of being finished cooking, okay? If you're serving that food outside, it should be put away in the refrigerator within 1 hour of it having been cooked. Why? The pathogens just love it at room temperature and outside in the sun on a warm sunny day. So you don't want to give them an opportunity to flourish on the food that you want to eat. So put it away as soon as you possibly can. Food safety is so very important, and you want to practice these things to the point that you don't have to think about them. It's just automatic. I do hope this helps. Take care and bye for now.